Dog, they are straight up lying. They're straight up lying, bro. They're straight up lying. Right? SkillCapped's whole model is trying to get players to farm as much as possible, right? And saying that farming is the key to winning. But the truth is, right, farming is just a byproduct of doing other things in the game very well, right? Like, if you know how to play out a lane correctly for the goals of your champion, you're gonna get decent farm out of laning phase that you can then translate into pretty good farm in the mid to late game, right? But having the farm itself be the focus is not that's not good practice because then it leads to you doing things that are actually detrimental to your team. Take it from me, somebody who's tested out like SkillCap's free resources, right? For I would like to say at least 100 games, right? Um, I've actually gone down in rating from following what they've been saying, right? This is before this season, of course, and I've looked at their recent information, and it's the exact same things that have like took my that have taken my rank further down, and I don't want you to, you know, incur the same losses that I did in the past, which is why I'm making this as like a PSA, you know, like if don't get me wrong, there is some information in their videos that's good, but the only reason why is because it's information that's publicly available elsewhere, right? That's grown in popularity because it's good information. So they use that information to supplement their business model so it looks more credible, right? So, for example, the idea of I, as like research, I just looked at like one of the more recent videos, right? The idea of using a like a lane dominant summoner spell in order to get priority, right? For lower ratings of the game. That is something that's not started by skill capped, but actually started by some smaller independent coaches. And then of course it grows by like getting into the audience of like Coach Rogue, for example, or that one dude whose name starts with like a B. It's like Biz Biz something. I don't really remember. But only after that information becomes like public knowledge and like really accessible, do you see it end up in a video like theirs, which is pretty scary because it means that they're putting um, they're putting true information at the start to make you feel as though the information that continues in the rest of the video is just as credible, but it's not though. And in fact, the information that they add, right, is the stuff that's going to hold you back, right? Is the stuff that's going to prevent you from climbing or even take you down a couple ranks. So I could, go into detail about how there's no way to verify that the games that you see, like within each video, are actually ranked games, or if the clips that you see in each video are placed at the ratings that you believe that they're like placed at, that they say that they're placed at, right? I could go into detail about how like we don't even know if the ranks that the players end up at or the progression that they have is true, right? And there's just so many different ways that things behind the scenes can be like mangled and manipulated that like we could go into it, but I think that you're already starting to get an idea of how people can change things into their favor. So because of that, I want to talk about like sort of some of the like macro level like ideas and concepts that you should be very wary of when getting information about how to improve at League of Legends, right? And this isn't just like skill capped specific. This is for like looking at any sort of like self-help or like self-improvement with this game. Okay, so the big idea that I want you to take away is that the channel's only content is coaching, right? Then the coaching is the content. Okay, what do I mean by this? Right. If a channel makes money, right, by selling you a coaching course, but they also have videos on YouTube where they have like free coaching sessions or like free advice, right? Then you should see how like the stuff that's available for free is only there so that way you can make the purchase of like their course on an external like website and things like that. If it was good information, right, then they wouldn't sell it for free. They would put it in the course. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? You know, if it was truly like super valuable information, knowing that they have the course available, they wouldn't just give it to you for free, right? Which which creates the question of, so what is the goal, or what is the structure that they're going for within the free content, so that way you make the transition into their paid content, right? And for that, it's the idea of like, I guess like fake work, to put it into more colloquial terms. Using SkillCapped as an example, if you're looking at their content, right? And again, going back to their classic business model of saying, as long as you farm very hard and, you know, end up with like this insane amount of CS, then you'll be able to climb too, right? The idea is that you try it out for a couple games and you feel like you are the best player in the game, right? Which may or may not be true, right? But your implementation of their tactics gives you metrics that feel like you're doing something, right? And after watching all of these videos, and you know all this stuff about wave management, right? You know all of this stuff about like how macro ought to be, how macro should be, right? You know all this stuff about like lane matchups and like how to navigate them, right? You feel as though you possess knowledge that people in your immediate area don't also possess. And for that, you feel as though you deserve a greater rank, right? So the idea is they've conditioned you into this this false narrative or false belief that you are not where you're supposed to be, in spite of knowing everything that you're supposed to know to improve, right? And so the question might be, or I guess like their hope is that with this like this incongruity between what you see and what you believe, right? You then seek out additional resources and even invest more into additional resources so that you can achieve what you think belongs to you, right? Now again, to reiterate, okay, I believe that a lot of players are really good at the game, right? I think that if you're looking at this type of content trying to improve, right, then already you're ahead of like 99% of ranked players who just like autopilot each game and trying to like come up with stuff creatively on their own sort of deal, right? Not to say that there isn't room for that, but just to say that if that's the primary way of like trying to improve at the game, there's better methods, right? There's more effective and efficient methods. But with that said, you should also realize that there are companies and organizations that directly profit from you trying to improve at the game, right? And more than that, they've had experience of Like they've had like market analysts, right? They have taken surveys from people who actually play ranked games, right? And they've gotten their opinions and they've gotten their thoughts, and they've understood how to best attract new players to their business via the promise of improving your rating at the game, right? So all of this is to say that some of these companies